Hey everybody, time for video number 3 in our conducting clinic series. The first video, we talked about your hand position and how you want your arm parallel to the floor. And we talked about what an ictus is. And in the second video, we talked about rebound and we talked about hand position. So now here in video 3, we're going to talk about patterns. But first, I want to talk a little bit, just give you an introduction to the preparatory beat and to cueing. And cueing is basically just a preparatory beat in a certain place. So the preparatory beat, we're going to be in our position, and all you do from not moving is ictus and lift. But first, the preparatory beat includes make eye contact with whoever it is. It could be your whole band or your soloist or your section. So look, and then as we lift from that ictus and lift, you breathe in, and you want to be very purposeful and demonstrative with that breath. Not like, but, just it should be natural, but maybe a little bit exaggerated, like this. Okay, so ictus, lift, right? Ictus, lift, breathe. And then when you arrive back at that ictus point, that's when the musician should play, or the band should start, or whatever the case may be. So we want that to happen in time, and we want it to be very predictable. So the way that you make it predictable is, well, to be very smooth and to be in time. If I go, you have no idea when I'm going to move back down, and you don't know when to come in. But if I've established myself, and then you know exactly when to start. So we're going to do that now in conjunction with our conducting pattern. So there's two types of conducting patterns. There's focal point pattern, focal point conducting, where every beat is in the same place, the focal point. And so wherever you kind of have your hand, I could point to this place in space, and the beat is going to happen in that spot every time, no matter what time signature I'm conducting in. It's going to happen in that space, even if I'm conducting in 6/4, 4, 5, 6. All the beats are happening in that same place. A lot of drum majors like to use focal point conducting. Focal point conducting is fine, but I prefer, for a lot of reasons, I prefer arc conducting. However, no one who's any good anyway uses only one style. Drum majors and conductors who are good conductors mix and match focal point and arc conducting to meet the needs of the band and to meet the needs of the music. So I want, as a starting point though, we want to start out in arc conducting. So in arc conducting, we're going to have our hands in that spot, and we're going to just pick another spot that's going to be 10 to 12 inches out from where your first spot was. Okay? And so we ought to be able to find those two spots and be pretty consistent with where that second spot is. Now, the second spot, we want to make sure that it is not a chicken wing situation where we're going back and forth like this to the side. Okay? But instead, where if my fingertips were touching the video screen right now, and I moved to the outside spot, my fingertips would still be touching the video screen, at least really, really, really close. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna bounce back and forth. So we're gonna give that lift and breath. That's the prep, and then we're gonna bounce and bounce out and bounce and back in, and we're just gonna do that together for a little bit. So I've got my Met set at 52, I think, or 56, and we've got the triplet subdivision going, and we're just going to go prep, bounce, and then bounce out, bounce out, bounce back to the middle, bounce out, and just practice this. We're not worried about any sort of pulse. We're not worried about any sort of what's 1, what's 2, what's 7, whatever. Just out, in, out, and trying to stay as smooth as possible between these two positions. Very smooth and making sure that we're not chicken winging, but rather that as I see it from the side, you see how that looks, where I'm kind of staying in that same plane. All right? Good. So once you have practiced that a little bit, you can go ahead and pause now and practice that if you want to. Pause. Once you practice that for a little bit and you come back, then we're ready to do a 3-4 pattern. So a 3-4 pattern we're going to have that middle, we're going to go out, that's count 2, and then we're going to come up for count 3. 3-4 helps us understand the basic pattern of conducting patterns. Pattern of patterns. Think on that. Anyways, count 1 always moves down. Always. In order for count 1 to move down, the rebound from the last count of the measure, whatever that is, has to be up. And so here in 3-4, 3-4, 3 is the last count of the measure. And so 3-4 is going to be, the rebound after count 3 is going to be up so that we can move down to count 1. By the way, count 1, downbeat. Yeah, that should help you remember that. The next to last beat of the measure is always going to be to the outside. So wherever we are, count 2 is the next to last beat. So we're going to go outside and then back in for count 3 and rebound up. Okay. And then the last bit of this little rule of conducting is that the first beat and the last beat are typically in the same place. And it's those inside beats that we move for our conducting. So, down, come out to count 3, making sure that we're not chicken winging it, out to count 3, and then back to the middle and rebound up. Okay, well, out for count 2 is what I meant to say earlier. Obviously, here, out for count 2, back in for count 3, and rebound up. All right, then the downbeat, and we bounce out. So, count 1, bounce out. Count 2, bounce back to the middle. Count 3, bounce up. Count 1, bounce out. Count 2, bounce back to the middle. Count 3, bounce up. Just like that. Let's do that a little slower than 56. And 1, ready, lift, and 1, bounce out. 2, bounce back in. 3, bounce up. 1, bounce out. 2, bounce back in. 3, bounce up. Out, back in, up. Out, back in, up. Out, back in, up. Good. And so you can practice that faster and faster. Don't just assume because I can do it at a slow tempo that you're going to be able to do it at a faster tempo. You have to practice, use your metronome, use your mirror. Okay? Now the next thing for this rule is that the beat prior to the next to last beat has to go in the opposite direction. So it's going to go in. So that's how in 4-4 we go in first and then out and then back to the middle. 4-4 is actually harder than 3-4 because when you go from count 1 to count 2, that's not a lot of space to cover with your hand. And when you go from 1 to count 2 in 3-4 time, that's not a lot of space to cover with your hand. But when you go from 2 out to 3, you have changed the distance from one point to the other. And so that means that your hand has to move faster. And it has to look smooth. So we go smooth, faster smooth, smooth, and then count 4 being the last beat, we go up and then down. So the 4-4 pattern goes down for count 1, bounce in for count 2, bounce out faster hand movement to count 3, and then bounce back to the middle for count 4. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, lift, and down in, down out, down up. That was wrong. Down in, down out, down to the middle, down up. In, out, back to the middle, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, practice 3-4 and 4-4 at various tempos keeping it as smooth as you possibly can. And I'll see you back in the same spot for video number 4.